So I'm turning 40 in a couple days. So today I want to share with you 10 different sales and really life lessons that I know now at 40, but I wish I knew at 20. Hey, I'm Marcus Chan, founder of Bentley Consulting Group, in which we provide modern sales training coaching for reps and teams so you can blow out your sales targets to earn $250,000 to $500K plus and become the elite sales pro you've dreamed of. Now, prior to this, I was in corporate sales and sales leadership, in which I hit and exceeded my quota 13 years in a row, doing 100 to 250% plus and hit club almost every single year. Now, as I reflect back, there are so many things that I wish I knew early on, but instead I paid the ignorance tax of trying to figure it out, and it cost me time, money, and emotion turmoil, to be quite frank. So here are my favorite lessons I'd like to share with you to save on the ignorance tax. And if you watch to the very end, you'll learn the one lesson that took me until I was 35 to figure it out, and it completely changed my life once I realized this. Let's dive in. Number one, your biggest competitor in deals and life is the status quo. In sales, we all know the longer it takes to close a deal, the longer your buyer has to realize they actually are okay with how your solution not making a change. Oftentimes, I've found that status quo kills more deals than anything else. And that's no different than anything else in life. That's relationships, that's health, that's fitness. And the reality is, for all the things that I just mentioned, it's not even just status quo. If you're actually not growing, you're actually dying. So it actually requires intention. Otherwise, you'll end up stagnating downwards as a result. So let me give you a really simple example. So, over the years, I've always been pretty consistent working out. And frankly, I've probably been doing the same workout now for literally over a decade. I kind of got down to the lockdown where I'm like, okay, every single day, I'm going to do these specific workouts for about 30 minutes. And it basically keeps me in pretty good shape all throughout the year. Now, over the last couple of years, though, I noticed that it still works pretty well, but probably not to the same level. And probably because obviously I'm getting older and things are changing my body, I'm like, this is really interesting. And I think I've fallen for this mistake here where I'm essentially stagnating to the point of actually going downward. I'm falling into a status quo mistake. And this is obviously very, very dangerous, because as I kind of think to the future of where I want to be in 20, 30, 40, 50 years in terms of a physique and energy perspective, I'm like, shoot, I'm not quite 40. I'm already having these problems. So what can I do? So in order to combat that, I'm like, what I got to do? I always have really respect for those who do calisthenics, who do those crazy bar workouts, who are just like super ripped regardless of age across the board. And they don't even go to an actual gym. So even just a couple weeks ago, I actually went and I bought a brand new calisthenics program, a step-by-step 30-day challenge of what to do. And I started actually just this past week. So I think I'm 4 days in, and I have never been more sore in my life. Well, probably maybe not my whole life, but definitely more sore than I've been probably well over a decade. And what's crazy is because of how the workouts are put together and just being open and coachable, it's really challenging me to do new things. It's been actually really cool. So I'm really excited for the next 30 days to see where I'm going to be at and to keep building off of that. But again, it's a good reminder that if we're not growing, we're dying, and that we always must stay hungry for never-ending growth in all aspects of my life. As I reflect back to my own life, there's been so many times where I definitely have stagnant without realizing it. So we always want to be cognizant of that and know the enemy of growth is doing absolutely nothing. It's the status quo. Number two, your circle of influence directly impacts your future. As the Jim Rohn quote goes, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So for instance, if you have 5 friends who are in great shape, you'll be the 6th. If you have 5 friends who overeat and are unhealthy, you'll be the 6th. If you have 5 friends who earn $100,000, you'll be the 6th. If you have 5 friends who earn $250,000, you'll be the 6th. If you have 5 friends who earn $1 million, you'll be the 6th. And this is directly impacts everything you do in your life, from your work to your personal. And I have found that, the old adage from your mom is saying, hey, watch out who you become friends with. It is so true across the board. Because whether you realize it or not, the people you spend the most time with, what they say and what they do will find a way to burrow into your subconscious. So you want to be really cognizant of that. And if you think about even at, say, work, if you're at work and you constantly are hanging out with people who complain about the market, complain about the territory, complain about policy, complain about the comp plan, complain about prospects, then you're going to do the same thing. Versus when you hang out, say, maybe elite top sales performers, even though they may still run into the exact same circumstances, they typically just don't complain about it. Instead, they focus on, hey, what can I control? What can I do? And if you are hanging around them, you'll also do the same as well. And the thing is sometimes you'll see a short-term effect, but long-term wise, what you don't realize is when you hang around them long enough, you also fall into the positive or negative as well. And I've seen this all across the board. So for instance, I remember a few months back, I was having a couple rough months for the business, and I was getting down on myself, beating myself up. And some of the people I was talking to, who are also friends, and they usually do pretty well. They're also having some rough months too. And I'm like, and we kind of fell into this kind of negative tailspin. And reality was, it felt good in the moment, but didn't really make me feel that great. And then a week later, I'm hanging out with another buddy of mine who's also in the same industry. He's absolutely crushing it, right? And it was actually really, really inspiring to me. And it was a reminder again that who we hang out, who we spend time with really impacts how we feel about a lot of different things. So if you have a choice of who you can surround yourself with, you might as well surround yourself with people who are uplifting, going to bring you up, who are going to challenge you and actually make you better. Lesson number 3, the who's in your life make or break you. Man, this is talking about the actual people in your life make or break you. This really feeds into the last concept I just mentioned here. But think about it even from a sales perspective, right? So for example, in deals, if you have direct connection to power, the actual executive decision maker, that compresses the timeline, increases your deal velocity. Or if you have the right champion that has the power, the influence, the credibility, they can help you actually move the needle. Right? And this applies to everything. So if it's in your career, who is the leadership at your company that you're actually connected with at all levels? All these things directly impact your life. And in reality, I hear some people say, oh, I'm a self-made person. I was self-made. I came from nothing. And I just don't agree with that, because at the end of the day, I know the reality is everyone in life has other people they've leaned upon, whether it's direct or indirect mentors or other people that have actually supported them and brought them up. So my dad is a great example. So he was born in communist China, obviously decades ago, and he grew up during the Cultural Revolution, didn't have anything, was very, very poor. Government took everything from them, and eventually he escaped and he came to America. Now, if you look at him today, he went from absolutely nothing to now. I mean, he retired. My mom retired when she was, I think, 32 years old or 31 years old, right? And he was like, he's almost 50 at that point. They have a little bit of an age gap, but he retired pretty early. Has like a bunch of properties. Has created financial freedom for himself. He's worked super hard his whole life. And if you ask him, like, hey, like, that's incredible, you're self-made. Again, he's like, no, not at all. He's like, from the time I came to America on an airplane to America, I got a sponsor. That sponsor was a family friend from China. Once he came to America, he didn't just suddenly make a bunch of money. He had to rely on friends and family and live with a bunch of other friends in an apartment who helped him get a job, right? Eventually, they helped him get a job to the point of, eventually made a little bit of money. And then, he moved to Springfield, Oregon, and he bought his first house in which he had to borrow money for that from other friends and family. And he didn't know how to start a restaurant, so he also learned from other people. So throughout his whole career, from starting a business to learning how to move to America to how to buy investment property, he has found people, mentors, friends, and other sources to actually bring him up. And that's why I have so much respect for my dad, because I realized by watching him go through all these hardships, the who's in his life has the opportunity to actually make or break you. And if you are intentional with this, just similar to your circle of influence, who are the who's in your life that can make or break you? And are you intentional with that? And this also means being tightly curated on keeping out the wrong types of people and bringing in the right types of who's that actually make your life better. But on top of that, learn to expand that to higher levels so you can constantly add more high-powered who's in your life. Number 4, get in the right boats. Now, Warren Buffett has famously said, it doesn't matter how hard you row, it matters which boat you get in. Meaning, at the end of the day, some people think you got to work hard to be successful, which it is true, you got to work hard, But the reality is if you're in the wrong type of opportunity vehicle, it doesn't matter how hard you work, you won't be able to make the money you want to make, especially say in sales. So for instance, I know if I worked as a construction worker, I probably would physically work far harder than what I do for my own business or in sales. But the reality is a construction worker doesn't make as much as a highly paid salesperson or an entrepreneur. So again, the biggest difference though is really what's the opportunity vehicle you're in. So for example, I remember early in my career, obviously I struggled really early on, if you know my story at all. Eventually started having some success and had been in the role multiple years. And I was really getting capped out at about $100,000. And at the end of the day, I was working super hard, but if I worked even 20% harder, 30% harder, I wouldn't be able to make more money. And to be able to break into multiple six figures and have more power, more influence, more everything, it really would probably take several years to even get that point. So at that point, I realized, crap, I'm working pretty hard, but the boat I'm in, I think I'm done with this boat. I had to get into a different opportunity vehicle, in which the following year, my first year in that role, I made in 9 months $125,000 in the sales before I got promoted to be a sales manager, right? Which I already made 25% more, not including how much I made in the 3 months as a sales manager, by simply being a better opportunity vehicle. And then of course, it became far more lucrative as I went up my career. So I share this with you because, one of the most important things is that I've seen in my life, I have seen far less talented, far less skilled, far less hardworking people just happen to choose the right opportunity vehicle and make a killing versus someone else who can outwork them, have way better skills, and they're simply stuck not being able to fully maximize their actual skill set. So hopefully we can kind of internalize this. And by the way, it doesn't mean if you're not making the money you want to make, it's not a good opportunity and you should just leave. Sometimes it just means the opportunity you're in right now, it maybe give you different skill sets. It may stack you to the right ones, but you always want to be aware, what is the right boat to be in? Am I in the right boat? Or can I deploy my leverage I have of time and energy into a better boat that can give me far more returns? Number 5, only the paranoid survive. All right, so if you think about it from a sales perspective, if you have happy eaters, meaning you think every deal is going to go through, it's going to lead to false confidence. Like you're just not going to do certain things that's going to help you actually increase your pipeline, actually close deals. So instead, you want to be healthily skeptical of each deal so you manage accordingly. So let's just say, for example, if you have 10 deals in your pipeline, if you have happy ears, you're like, I'm going to close all 10. I feel really good about that. Versus if you're healthily skeptical, you might be like, okay, realistically, I'll probably close 3 of these deals and the other 7 is a little bit unknown. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and book meetings with the other 7 deals to get back on a call and see if I can move them forward even more, right? But on top of that, I'm going to juice my pipeline and prospect even more now. So that way I can replace those 7 with 7 other more qualified opportunities. So what ends up happening is when you are more paranoid, if you will, you're going to have better preparation. You're going to do these things that you wouldn't normally do because you're worried it might go wrong. Now, it also means to do it healthily. So you don't want to be overly skeptical, but you want to have a healthy balance. Let me give you another example, right? Like let's just say, for example, if you're choosing to work for a new company, if before you just accept whatever offer, before you even supply blindly, what would you do if you were paranoid that the company could be potentially a bad company? What would you do? And make a list. I mean, you probably would do your homework and research them properly on RepView. You look on different review sites. You look on Glassdoor. You'll probably book different meetings, different leaders inside there. You'll probably talk to past reps. If you get into the interview process, you're probably going to prepare a list of questions and really fully vet them out. So you're really going to be doing a deep dive just to make sure you're minimizing your risk. You're going to do these things that are going to separate you from the pack. And I have found just having a healthy balance of this across the board for every part of your life, this will just make you far more successful versus being overly optimistic or overly pessimistic. It's having that good balance of the in-between of being optimistic with a little bit of that pessimism, that skepticism, which will actually keep you grounded in what's really going on. Number 6, have a bias for action. Here's the thing. Overthinking, analysis paralysis, doubt, that kills far more dreams than anything else. And the reality is some people are just so hoping they can make a decision and there's like zero risk. And the reality is there's never 100% guarantee on anything. All you can really do to control is you can decide, analyze the feedback, you iterate, and you keep going depending on whatever happens. So, for example, I remember back in 2011, and because I've embodied some of these principles, I had done my homework. I made a switch to a whole brand new company, brand new industry, brand new product, brand new company, brand new leadership, brand new everything. And I didn't know anything about the industry. And I remember just jumping in and really, really excited. And, because I had my past background, had success, I was able to ramp pretty quickly. And I was one of the top reps within the first 6 months, because of my past background, I just knew what to do. But about 6 months in, I started getting a little worried. My sales manager quit, my sales director quit, and my VP of sales quit. So basically everyone that actually interviewed me and brought me in completely quit. And what made me particularly worried was the whole reason I came over from a whole different company was because of the leadership there. And they saw my skill and potential, and their promise was hopefully I'll perform at a good level and they'll promote me to be a sales leader in about 2 years, which will be faster than what most reps are able to do. So I was really excited about the opportunity because of the compensation, but also just the upside of the company. But here's the thing. Now suddenly, all the people that actually knew my background were gone. And yes, I've been there for 6 months, I had some pretty good results. But now whoever's going to replace them, they just saw 6 months. They didn't know anything else about me. And frankly, I was pretty freaked out. And I was second guessing, man, should I make that move? What can I do now? And I was just really wondering, wow, what a terrible decision I made. If only I'd known before. Why did I make this? Should I basically quit as well and just go back to my old company? And all these things, right? And that obviously didn't serve me. So instead I'm like, okay, what can I do? Well, I know they can put a new VP in place. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm going to do. And I'm going to set myself up for success. So I kept performing. New VP came in like a month or two later. And he said, hey, listen, told the team, listen, I'm taking over. We're going to put in a new director in place. We're going to put a new sales manager in place. So we're going to start interviewing for a sales manager. And I raised my hand because I wanted to interview for a sales manager. And I'm sure he probably thought I was crazy because he's like, this dude's 6 seconds in. And there's going to be people who are going to apply for this role, who's going to interview at this current company, who's been in the company for 5-10 years, have a bunch of President's Club, a lot of success, and this rookie's going to want to apply. I'm like, I'm just going to give you 100%. So what I end up doing, because I have a bias for action, I didn't just give up. I kept performing up until the interview point, but then I simply over-prepared for the interview. So I knew the interview was going to come up, and I just made sure anything else that potentially could go against me, I backed up. I literally went back to that VP and that director and that sales manager quit and got letters of recommendation from them. Okay. So I got their backing, right, to basically put me into play. I went and pulled up my old track record, put all my proof of what I'd done in the past, how I led teams. I put together exactly the vision for the team I'd be taking over, what I would do. I mapped out exactly how I'd restructure the territories properly, the weaknesses I saw, and exactly my 90-day strategy to actually implement as well. And when I went into interview, I did exactly what I normally do in the sales process. And I just showed him why I should be the number one choice. And the cool part is I ended up getting that role. I ended up getting promoted as sales manager in 9 months, which is about 2 years faster than anybody else. It was actually a record in the company, or one of the fastest promotions in the history of the company. And I share that with you because the only way I was able to do that is because I had a bias for action. But here's what was a really neat benefit I didn't think much about. That person, Mark, that VP, ended up becoming a who in my career. We became very close, and he supported me. He gave me opportunities to win. He challenged me. He made me better, and he made me become the best version of me in that sales manager role. And lo and behold, fast forward a few years later, I became one of the fastest promotions to directors as well, because I was able to implement what he was teaching and guide me as well, because he was the right who in my corner. It wasn't just me. It was the stuff I learned from him, from other leaders in the company, my past leaders, that brought me to that point. And you combine the bias for action, you can kind of see how these lessons will stack on top of each other to lead some pretty cool results if you're willing to apply them as fast as possible. Number 7, nobody will care about your success and your growth as much as you. That's not your company. That's not your manager. That's not enablement. Now, this might go against what I just said when I talk about Mark, right? But at the end of the day, you have to show up first that you care about your growth. And the top 1% take 100% ownership in any role that they're in. So even if you're not happy in your role, even if you're feeling burnt out by a role, it's taking 100% ownership in your role and just caring about your own success and growth. And let me give you a really simple example. So early in my career, I got a job as a sales and management intern at a pretty big rent-a-car company. And they had a pretty robust summer internship program where literally they had different tasks you do every single day and every single week, where you need the branch manager to teach you certain things. You have certain tasks you have to do. You have to actually deliver certain sales numbers as well for selling their insurance. You also have to learn about the business overall. And I remember, my branch manager was like very, very busy, right? Just that's how most leaders are. They're just very, very busy. And, what was interesting was, I remember going for my first 30 days, and I became one of the top sellers for their insurance, despite being an intern across the board. I remember just getting together with some of these other interns, and they're asking me how are you excelling like this so well? How are you crushing it? I'm like, I just do what they told me to do. I'm like, okay, that's weird, but fine, whatever. They say, okay, well, how's it going with the summer plan, the checkoff you have to do? I'm like, it's fine. What do you mean? And they're like, what? They're like, is your manager going through it with you? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, ours isn't. And none of the interns, turns out, had really been doing the summer plan. And I said, well, how come? How come you guys aren't doing it? They're like, well, my manager's too busy. So how isn't your manager busy too? I'm like, yeah, she's super busy. So I'm like, well, how is it getting done? I'm like, well, because I pester her about it. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, literally every day, we have certain tasks to go over. And the first thing, I get there before everyone else does, and I'm at her door. I say, hey, listen, today we need to go over this. When today are we going over this today? When today are we going to go over X, Y, Z you're supposed to teach me about? And if she tried to push me off, then I'll make sure she blocked time the next day. So I made sure we always had time to go through and so she could teach me about the business. And this also helps me with, selling insurance, doing everything else, but I'm just making sure that she knows this is a part of my job and I care about my success and my growth. And they were shocked. They're like, you're really doing that? I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't I? Because they told me when I got hired here, this is part of my job. So I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be successful. And it wasn't that my boss didn't want me to be successful. She was just busy. That's all it was. And there's a really powerful lesson there at that point, because here those other interns were thinking, well, if my manager really want to train me, they would just train me. And then they kind of just waited for them to get pulled in. And they just allowed themselves to get pushed around. But I wasn't willing to accept that. And I share that with you because at the end of the day, yes, your manager and your leadership wants you to be successful, but there will be nobody who will care about your success and growth as much as you. So you must take 100% ownership with it. So this is regardless if your company has no resources, no PMF, no training, no support, bad marketing, bad leads. I don't really care. You must take 100% ownership in that role and just do your best to be successful with what you actually have, because your circumstances only determine where you start and not where you actually go. This is everything in life. And I believe this is actually what helped me be successful in my past roles, but it's also helped me be successful in my own entrepreneurial journey, because at the end of the day, no one's gonna help me be successful as an entrepreneur. I determine all that. So if you can internalize it now, it only serves you for your life. Number 8, the process is the prize. This is the big one. This one took me a long time to figure out. And what this is really about is learning to actually enjoy the process of what you're doing. So for example, if you're learning how to cold call, learning to actually enjoy the process of preparing the list, making the calls, executing each day. If it's running sales calls or doing whatever, it's enjoying the process. If you want to get in great shape, it's learning to enjoy the process. Because I know it's really easy to set big goals in life and then ultimately compare yourself to where you are right now to where you want to be, or even worse, compare yourself with others, which I always struggle with as well. And that's why there's been a really great book called The Gap and the Gain, in which what it talks about is there's two ways to kind of look at it, right? You can look at the gap of where you are today to where you could be. Look back at where you were when you began and where you've come so far with the gain. And that's why it's really important to focus on the gain of where you were and where you are now, because it helps you realize how powerful the process is. And for me, this is something that I've really learned to enjoy over time now. So it's kind of like, for me, I used to hate working out, but now I enjoy the process of work. I enjoy the burn. I enjoy how uncomfortable it is, because I know it's going to be great. And it's not necessarily about the end achievement of me being in great shape or whatever, but just enjoying being present in the moment, just actually having fun. And if we can internalize the process is the prize, it's actually the gift that we're given, it's amazing how much more satisfied we actually become in life versus saying, oh man, I didn't achieve a certain title yet, I didn't make a certain income yet, I didn't do whatever. When we learn to enjoy the process, it becomes quite therapeutic as part of our lives. Life lesson number 9, design your life intentionally. Here's the thing. We grew up being told what to do, what to wear, how we should act, what we should aspire for. We should be a doctor, we should be a lawyer, we gotta wear this, we gotta do this, gotta say certain things. Sometimes, I found personally, because I'm being told my whole entire life, I don't end up knowing what I really want. And I end up chasing things that other people told me that I should go for. So for example, even when I got into sales, I didn't really know what I really wanted. And I was told, like, listen, you gotta excel. You want to become like a VP sales, a CRO. That's what you want to do. And that's just what I went after my whole life, especially in that's what I went after my whole corporate career. And I remember getting to the point where, I'm one of the youngest directors in the company, and I got a big sales force of 85 plus employees, and really stressful job, but I enjoyed it. But I was like, man, like, is this what I want in my life? I was traveling. I was living in a hotel room 100 plus nights a year, always gone from my family, working a lot of hours, tired, very, very stressful. I'm like, this is kind of crazy. And I looked at my boss, my VP, and I saw, I'm like, man, like, he travels more than I do. He works harder than I do. And then his boss, even more. And I realized at that point, man, am I on the wrong mountain? Did I spend all this time trying to climb this mountain, and I'm like, this is the mountain I'm on? And that was a really interesting point. Right? So that's where I started to make pivots to what I was going to do. And ultimately, that's when, at 35, I'm like, okay, I'm now in a financial position. I can do whatever I want. It's time to go all on my side hustle and make it a main hustle. And I completely changed my trajectory because I realized I want to design my life in a completely different way where I had time freedom. I could be there with my kid. I could have time for my wife. I could do whatever I want, have time for it, not be in meetings back to back to back. So that was really powerful because I got intentional with my life. And I share this with you because you want to be intentional for all aspects of your life. This is from your physical fitness to your health, to your relationships, to money, to how your day is spent, to how your energy is spent. Are you intentional to actually designing it? And if you aren't intentional with it, you'll find your time completely flies by every single day. So if your whole week flies by, your whole month flies by, or your whole quarter flies by, and you're like, what the heck just happened? And you're not really happy what happened in that process during that time, chances are pretty good is you probably haven't been intentional enough to design your life the way you actually want to look. So that's actually why, every single year, I'll typically write what I call a vivid vision or a life manifesto, where I literally write out exactly what my life is like from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, to what I'm doing, to who I'm with, to how I'm feeling, because I want that intentional design. And what's really, really cool is every year I do this, and when I rewrite it, I'm always like, wow, that actually happened. Like, these things happen. Now I'm actually in the home now I dreamt of. I now have the cars I wanted. I'm now doing these things I actually wanted. I'm spending time with people I really wanted. And it's amazing because it didn't happen by accident. It happened by intentional design. So I share that with you because life is far too short. Before you know it, your time flies by like this. Like, it literally seems like just yesterday, I was 20 years old. And before I knew it, 2 decades flew by, and a lot of crazy things have happened. And my life is completely different than it was when I was 20 years old. And I know the next 20 will probably go by even faster, and following 20 even faster, and hopefully another 20 after that, it'll go even faster. So I'm glad I realized this at this point now, because now I'm even more intentional than I ever was before. So if you're not intentional with how you want your life to truly be like, I highly encourage you to take the time to design what your perfect life looks like so you can start acting in accordance to it now. Because if you want to achieve that life of what you truly desire, you can't keep acting the way you used to act. You must act in the way that you're supposed to act for the future. Lesson number 10. The greatest cost in life is paying the ignorance tax. And something I mentioned earlier, and most people just don't realize this, and it took me a while to really realize this, but the biggest cost in your life is the ignorance tax. It's the cost of time, money, and more things of simply not knowing how to do something. So I'll give you a really simple example. If your on-target earnings is $200,000 and you know your comp plan max is $1 million, there's going to be the hard cost of the opportunity cost and what you could do with it, right? So for instance, let's say your on-target earnings is $200,000 with a comp plan max of $1 million. Each year, you're not maxing your comp plan, it actually costs you that net difference. So if you just say you're just hitting $200,000, well, that net difference of $800,000 is your cost. That's the ignorance tax you're paying. You're paying that every year. You're not making $1 million. But here's the worst part. The ignorance tax is not just $800,000 in lost earnings for each year. It's what you could do with it. So think about that for a second. If you are in that role for 3 years and you lose $800,000, which ends up being $2.4 million in that time frame, after you back out taxes, let's just say it's 1.2 million for simple math. That 1.2 million, what could you have invested into to make that more money? What could you taken that to do could you have used that money to buy great vacations for your family, create great memories? Could you do that to start a business? Could you invest in something else? So that is your opportunity cost that ends up adding up to be quite a bit more than even just the initial $800,000 per year. But the other big cost is your time, because your time is lost. If you're trying to figure it out, trying to have success in that turmoil, it costs you so much more. And the reality is, some people say time is money. That's not true. Because the reality is if you run out of money, you can always get more money. But if you run out of time, you don't get more time. So as a result, time is infinitely more valuable than money. And I realized that, especially early on, that the longer it takes for me to figure something out, it's literally become an ignorance tax, which is something which costs me so much more. That's why now I do whatever I can to reduce how much ignorance tax is getting paid in my life and career. That's why I personally have invested over $250,000 into coaches and masterminds, as I'm literally compressing their decades of mistakes into months and years for myself. And the result, I've made millions of dollars because of them. And if I hadn't, well, frankly, I'd probably be going from sales job to sales job every 18 and 24 months if I even stayed in sales. And I definitely wouldn't have the life that I'm blessed to live today. So there you have it. Those are 10 life and sales lessons that I know now at 40 that I wish I knew at 20. Now, if you want our help to help you cut down on your ignorance tax and crushing in sales, head below, book a call with my team so it's a good fit for our coaching programs. And if you want to see how to build intentional habits to create your own dream life, I'll see you in this next video right here.